remote TV for some of our members. They are appearing, the screen won't be accurate, but they're participating in the meeting, and the places that they're at around the United States of America are in public places that are publicly available for anyone who wishes to participate in this meeting. And are we up and running?
Go ahead, Ken.
With that, I will say welcome to everyone to meeting number 532 of the Lake George Park Commission. It is Tuesday, March 26th, 2024, and we're in downtown Lake George at the Fort William Henry Conference Center. I think item 2 is approval of meeting minutes, fiscal action reports. Can we have a approval of the meeting minutes? Do we have a so second? Move second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none. Approval of the fiscal actions report for February 2024. So
Moved.
motion made, seconded, discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
No, is passed. Executive Director Wick is going to introduce us to some new staff members that we have. Leave it at that.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have had a little bit of staff changeover at the Park Commission, so change is always good. So Justin is now the new Roger. Roger is off on long-term leave, but Justin's also absorbed the duties, the HR duties of Michelle. Michelle has gone down to the BSC and is currently replaced by Kara DeLuca. She is second from the back right there. That's Kara. So if you get a chance after the meeting, Kara will be here the whole meeting. Kelly, next to her, is Kelly Kinney. She's long time with DEC and is now with us, which is fantastic. She's the new Erica, doing all of our fiscal and financial work. And then lastly, we have Ben Marshall, who everyone has seen. Ben is the new Justin, as he is now going to be one fast description with running all of the labor.
Confusing.
And exactly.
You're handing out scorecards?
I think it's fantastic. We're finally decreasing our number of bearded number of people out there. So I appreciate that, Ben. Yeah, so Ben is going to be doing most of Justin's traditional work of managing the vote inspection program and several other things. So that's good. So at the end of the day, well, one more, this is Jason. I think you all know, went back to Ag and Markets. He took a promotion down at Ag and Markets, which is great for him. And we're going to be seeking a backfill of our environmental analyst position. He or she will be working with Joe. We haven't gotten that far to kind of advance that position yet, but that would be 4 new positions out of 9 in the office, 10 at the agency. So pretty big change. So add that at the same time as we're doing all of our vote doc registrations. And again, thanks to Commissioner Stanek, who's at our office every day at 7:30. And by the time I get there, he has already sent applications in, downloading and sending out decals and everything. So we're going to start to think that he doesn't enjoy Betty's company as much as you do. But Joe has been nothing but stalwart coming to the office and making sure our database program is online and doing a lot of processing of everything. He doesn't need to do it, but he does it. He's very good at it, so we appreciate his time. But yeah, by this summer, we think we'll be up and running with 4 new staff, and it's going to take a little while for everybody to get trained into those positions. But we think these things are good things. People move on to other positions. We have new staff come in, and we look forward to that. So thank you.
And I'll work hard at trying to learn your names. Continue to refer to you as your predecessor. You can just answer to that. Item number 3, and welcome to everybody, and we look forward to your additions to the Park Commission. Tracking stormwater discharges to Lake George. David's going to introduce Nick Roll. Wow.
Nick Morale is another bearded gentleman from Warren County Soil and Water. So Nick, have you been here before presenting to the board?
I have not.
Okay, so Nick, when I was at Soil and Water, I think I hired Nick before I left, and I left before Nick started. So he started on like the day I left for the Park Commission, so whenever they had the pleasure of working together. But Nick is exceptional. He's taken on a great array of duties at the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation. And so we've always had a strong working relationship between the Park Commission and Warren County Soil and Water from when Mike White was the director here and I was the manager of the Soil and Water. We continue that relationship now. We have a contract with Warren County Soil and Water for about $75,000 to do different non-point source projects to kind of protect Lake George from pollutants. The project that Nick is going to be talking about today is monitoring stormwater discharges to Lake George. So we've done a lot of work over the years, our office, Warren County Soil and Water, Lake George Association, a number of groups to do projects that take stormwater runoff going into Lake George and retrofit those types of things. But to identify where those priority sites are, sometimes it takes a little bit of work to take a look at some of these stormwater discharges and outfalls. So Nick and Bob at Soil and Water put together a project proposal, and Nick is going to talk a little bit about that today. We got a little bit of a late jump on our contract with Soil and Water, so they didn't get as much sampling work done as they wanted to, but we're going to be carrying that into 2024 as well. So with that, I will introduce Nick Rowell.
Excellent. Thank you for that great introduction, Dave. Yeah, and keep an eye out, on Elm Street, that port sidewalk project forward.
Right.
So as soon as the snow melts, keep telling me he's jumping right on it.
Good. Yeah, we're gonna go to the sides.
Justin, do I have to do anything to swap over the screen?
Nope, you're actually gonna use this other projector, so the center.
Okay.
That's.
Is it, that's, right here.
Music, if you want to start playing that.
Well, let's get up and running, maybe you can highlight the overall contract, five projects.
Yeah, 5 projects we're working on, park commission. So like I said, we just received back all the quotes for sidewalk going in on Montcalm Street. Ideally, Lake George Village want to do Montcalm and Schuyler, but with the budget, we were only able to get Montcalm done. One of the reasons is Montcalm Street is actually 5-foot sidewalks. So we have to turn the sidewalk panel sideways, so you're only getting 4 linear feet out of every sidewalk panel. And that will be 310 feet of porous sidewalk coming down that slope on Montcalm Street. So that'll be a nice project that's going to start as soon as the snow melts. They've already started on a water diversion project at the reservoir north of the transfer station. And so when they clean out the sediment basin up there, they're able to divert the water temporarily around that reservoir to keep it clean while they maintain it. And the other project is the stormwater outfall sampling. You read that on?
Wait, do we have
No,
different remotes?
yeah, I'll just put it on. Sometimes we go like right underneath it.
Well, just noticing we're in the Lake George South room, this remote says Lake George North.
Excellent. So the project I'm gonna be talking about today, is the, outfall sampling on Lake George watershed. So like Dave said, he hired me 12 years ago, and then as I was walking through the door, he was walking out with a box full of stuff. And I said, good luck. All right. But since then, one of the first projects I was given was, mapping outfalls and sampling outfalls for the town of Queensbury, some for Glens Falls, and Warren County throughout the municipal separate storm sewer system. And that's a designated boundary, based on population density, so our more highly populated areas, so part of Queensbury, almost all of Glens Falls, and then up through now, Lake George and, the entirety of the village of Lake George. And then anywhere there's Warren County roads within that boundary. So it's been a great program, that we've been working with those 5 municipalities on for since I've been there 12 years. And we found a lot of good data mapping these stormwater outfalls, sampling, our sampling regime with those MS4s. And I always, for years, I'm like, we really should have like an MS4 light program, so it could be outside those MS4 boundaries and map those outfalls. So I brought that idea to Dave, and I thought it was a great idea to do outside the MS4 area, but within Lake George watershed. So sort of
standing out there. This is good.
I know what, I have a projector. I can set up. I brought it. Yeah. I can actually on the screen. Go on.
Want to set that, start setting that up?
Yeah.
So our camera's over there. Kevin, if you want, we can move on to the application. After the application.
Sounds like a simple solution. How's everybody on the remotes? Are you hearing us and seeing us?
Yes,
Kathy, are you awake?
All set, thank you.
There you go. Good to see you. All right.
There's no title over here. Oh, this is nice. Sorry.
Is there other project?
Yeah, project review, I can report.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Project review action report, resolution 2024 06.
Resolution 2024-06, accept the project review action report. Whereas the commission has received and reviewed project review action report prepared by the staff and dated March 19, 2024. And the project review committee recommends acceptance of the project review action report. Now therefore be resolved as the commission directs that the project review action report be incorporated in the minutes of the full commission meeting. So moved.
Motion,
second,
any discussion? Hearing none?
So the public doesn't really know what that is. So the commission has, most of our applications are compliant with our regulations, and staff, Joe and Jason, for the time, Jason's gone now, but staff process about 300 applications a year. This board only sees a small percentage of those, the ones that don't meet current standards or the rating changes or mutual votes, those types of things. So if anybody is interested in the volume of work that's done behind the scenes on provisional applications, that information is available. And it's presented each month in the project review actions report. So Joe has X amount of active applications, some are pending information, some are just getting started, those types of things. So if you hear the commission say project review actions report, then that's what it's kind of talking about. If anybody has any interest in that, Joe, I don't know if we post that on our website, but.
Yeah, we've all the commissioning meeting materials are listed on the website, so.
And those have summary of each of the projects that are pending in commission action.
Right.
Yeah, great. So, thank you.
Thank you. Motion was made, we had discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing made. Resolution is passed. Are we wanting to go back to the presentation?
I think we're getting there.
Yeah, I think we should be good. I don't wanna fly yet.
I don't want to be up to no, that's fine, we're not. Give it a roll again.
All right, let's see.
maybe they should put on their eclipse. on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Oh, there we go. We're looking good.
That Dave in his former life?
Yeah. Yes, that is our newest hire, Jake Huntley. He's been with us just over a year now, so I'm getting Jake up to date. He comes from the Warren County Fish Hatchery. He got a background in fisheries. So he's done a lot of water sampling, so naturally, Jake's gonna take on some of these duties as well. He's been a great addition to our team. So yeah, a little program outlining kind of what I was just discussing. We are following the MS4 protocols. So they were already set up, already established, set in place. MS4 is an EPA mandated permit. We do dry weather sampling. The reason we do dry weather sampling is we're trying to find any illicit substances in that stormwater. So we don't want to sample during rain because most of the outfalls are going to be running. So we try to do at least 24 hours of dry weather, ideally 48 hours. Last summer was very difficult to get that 48 hours of dry weather. So we did our best. We also follow the SUNY Adirondack sampling protocol for chlorine sampling. So we use a colorimeter, and that's basically you put a powder substance, what's it called? You put a little packet in there and it'll test the water for chlorine and it'll show up with a pink tint to it. The color emitter reads that color, tells you the amount of chlorine in that water. And soon Adirondack accepts samples of 0.02, and so that's what we go with. But we sample and inspect both flowing and non-flowing, so you can still find issues in stormwater even when outfalls are not running. The thing about illicit discharges is they happen quickly and randomly. So if something gets dumped into a stormwater system and comes out the pipe, a lot of times you don't see it coming out that pipe at that exact moment, but you can see signs of an illicit substance in there. And again, just for some background, we didn't just randomly come up with this program. We've been doing it for these municipalities for a number of years. So, kind of where are we? When I talk about the MS4 boundary, everything in pink is that MS4 boundary, so it runs up into the Lake George watershed, covering the village and parts of the town of Lake George. So you can see in Queensbury, the MS4 actually stopped before the Lake George watershed. So where we sample for the town is in this MS4 boundary. So when I was talking to Dave, I thought this would be an excellent program for the rest of the Lake George watershed. So we're staying outside of that MS4 boundary, mapping and sampling outfalls within that Lake George watershed. So field data, we're collecting a ton of data out there. More data is better. We use a cell phone with a GPS. It's got a program called Survey 123. Got 8 pages of forms on it that we fill out. Everything from our water sampling constituents, so temperature, pH, free chlorine, ammonium, conductivity, chloride even, down to some visual stuff, so those dry weather outfalls. We're going to look for color, we're going to look for flow lines, leftover residues in those pipes. I have Jake stick his head in the pipe and say, do you smell anything? Yeah. Do you smell any sulfides, sewage, anything like that? Rancid, sour, all signs of potential illicit discharges. We also look at vegetation and algae. As we know, vegetation and algae love nutrients. Nutrients come from a number of sources, so if you see excess growth or excess algae at that outfall, that can certainly be one indicator. And then the physical pipe, so we're taking measurements of the pipe. Is it crushed? Is it old? What kind of pipe is it? Or what kind of ditch is it? And an outfall is just a concentrated flow of stormwater that enters a water body. And that's the MS4 definition. So if we find a location where we think it's a potential illicit discharge, something illicit is getting in the water, what do we do? Well, we continue inspecting up that storm sewer shed. So if the pipe is here and we know the water is coming from this way, we'll keep following up that storm sewer shed and looking at different catch basins to try and find out maybe where that illicit discharge is coming from. There's low priority to high priority outfalls that we might run into based on indicators. We would certainly, if we found a high priority one, we contact Park Commission, directly go to the municipality to continue to further inspect these issues. Then if needed, which we haven't run into yet, additional sampling for bacteria, chemical sampling, if required, send it off to the lab. Of course, that would require an approval process. So where is all the field data? It's all online. So you'll see with this website, you'll see all the MS4 data on there. It's all public data of the sampling we've done for all 5 municipalities. And I've just lumped in the Park Commission outfall sampling into that data. Sarah Frankenfeld at Warren County, she's in the GIS department. She set up this map for us, so anybody can go there and click on the point, see what I've collected. You can actually watch me in the field collecting data, so it's real-time updates. So it's a really nice informational site for all of our municipalities. So, what do we do in the field? With this program, we were able to purchase a new YSI water quality sampling meter, which is really, really nice for collecting a lot of data really quickly. It's how we get our temperature, our pH, our conductivity, our chlorides, and it also has an ammonium probe. So we set up we're able to put more probes on this thing. There's a lot of different probes you can get it, but we geared those probes towards stormwater sampling. We have a separate YSI where we sample the Glens Falls watershed. And that's set up more for drinking water source sampling. So you can set these, water quality meters up slightly different depending on what you're sampling. We've got a whole box of goodies. We call that our illicit discharge detection box. It's got all sorts of test strips in it, measuring tape, temperature gauge. We can collect cotton swabs for detergents. This is what the colorimeter reads. You can see how pink that is. So that's a clear sign there's a lot of chlorine in there. And then this is one of the data sheets that we collect on our cell phone. That's part of survey 123. So there's 8 pages of all fun data that we collect. So, being in the water quality world, a lot of you know, things that you might find coming out of stormwater pipes that may affect water quality. So I'm not going to dwell on these too much, but obviously phosphorus coming from fertilizers, potentially septic failures. Not a huge issue here, but in other parts of New York, manure, a big source in agriculture, some freshwater impacts. Nitrogen is a big one. That's why we're collecting. We have an ammonium probe. Comes in some cleaners, fertilizers, human waste, total suspended solids. So we've got a conductivity probe, where you can see things like erosion from construction. We know that sediment, nutrients find in sediment, bring that into a water body. There's also natural erosion. Chlorides, so we do winter sampling for our MS4s, but chlorides, aside from road salting, chlorides can also show up in fertilizer runoff. Bacteria, so this would be if we got to the point where maybe we thought there was a broken sewer line or maybe a septic influence, something on the bacteria issues, we might collect a bacteria sample and send it off. And that would be at that kind of time frame release stage. Temperature affects a lot of things, including plant growth, but if you're finding really high temperatures during winter, that could be a sign of a cross connection somewhere. Maybe somebody mistakenly hooked their sanitary pipe into a stormwater system. That water would be a lot warmer coming out of that pipe. pH. So some illicit discharge impacts the water quality. So a lot of things that are discussed throughout all the work that everybody does at the Park Commission. Sedimentation issues, like looking at things like deltas, brook. Thermal pollution, definitely a big issue we're always looking at with our trout streams. That affects dissolved oxygen. Algae blooms, deal with nutrients, nutrient runoff. Of course, invasive species establishment. They love those preserved areas. They can outcompete those natives. Definitely a change in aquatic vegetation. When you're talking about temperature and nutrients, bacteria, trash and aesthetic, big one. And then drinking water source. So we don't just look at surface waters, we also look at wells in and around areas, potentially stormwater affecting these drinking water sources. So what goes into stormwater sampling? What do we do at these outfalls? We go to them and find different ways to get to them. Some of them are very difficult to find and get to. But we're collecting a lot of data. So what do we find at these outfalls and what have we found throughout the years? And so what I'm showing you is pictures of potentially illicit discharges that we found throughout the MS4 program. So this is not necessarily in Lake George, but throughout our sampling and why we do this type of sampling and mapping. So we found septic influence. That was an overflow from the septic system coming right into the stormwater ditch. So we sampled it, looked at signs of, usually you can tell if there's sanitary in there, if it's a grayish color or whitish color. Obviously, if you see like, bats in tissue, that nature. So that was a good one. We were putting in a stormwater system when we found that one. We were able to remediate that issue. An oil sheen on the surface. So there are things besides oil that would create an oil sheen like this. Iron oxidizing bacteria will do it. But there's a slight difference in the way that oil sheen works. So if you can break it up and it kind of breaks in pieces and will separate, that's usually iron oxidizing bacteria. If you stick a stick in it, knock it, and it goes right back together, that's usually potentially a petroleum product. Not always, but potentially. This was a good one. This is Matt. He was our intern. I said, well, that's a funny color. I'm not getting in that water. Why don't you jump in there and go? So he jumped right in there, and grabbed a sample, and we kind of tracked this one upstream. I called the town of Queensbury and said, hey, we definitely have a north discharge here. A tributary to Halfway Brook is blue. Let's track this upstream. So Craig Brown with the town came out with us, we tracked it up, found out it was a pond. Gentleman had poured pond dye in the location of the outfall. We got a huge rainstorm following that. So all that dye overflowed out and into a tributary of Halfway Brook. So that is considered an algicide. The way it was used, so they made him get a permit. They discussed, proper protocol for using this type of product. This was a good one. This actually goes to Westbrook. And we showed up and we're looking at the road going, geez, what is that? And it was running down the road, and made it to this catch basin that leads right to Westbrook. So we followed upstream. I mean, it was just obvious what house it came from. We called the town of Lake George, Dan Baruch, and his crew went out, talked to the landowner. It ended up being, I believe it was concrete dust washed out of the back of the truck. Again, you definitely don't want concrete dust getting into our streams. We've learned from those issues in the past and what that can do to fish populations. So actually, this gentleman that did that was required to come to a stormwater class. I thought that was a great requirement. So educate the landowners on why not to do this. And that worked out well. This one I've seen on a number of occasions. So we're getting a chlorine hit at this outfall. So we walked up into the storm sewer shed, found out there was a broken sprinkler that was just dumping municipal water onto the road into a drop inlet and out to the outfall. We were getting high chlorine hits here. So they went back, talked to the landowner, he got his sprinkler fixed, and all worked out. This is one that I see quite often. So you see a lot of interesting things at outfalls, like what can fit into that stormwater system, come out to an outfall and potentially out to a water body. So we see this one quite often in spring and fall. Anybody know what that is? Yep. Pesticide or herbicide applications stay off the line for 24 hours. If this flag can get washed down to a catch basin into an outfall, so can whatever they're flying. So a good photo. I did not place that there. I swear that was just there when I took the photo. Chlorine hit. Suds. So suds can come from breaking down organic matter, but it can also come from a cross connection in a washing machine, or if somebody has a sump pump connected to a stormwater system, and that sump pump maybe was connected to a washing machine or draining cleaning products. So we've seen that at outfalls. You can see how green that stormwater or the base of that outfall is with algae growth. Again, looking upstream, figuring out where those nutrients are coming from. Blue dye, some of you might recognize this photo. Again, that blue dye is meant to keep down algae growth, so we saw that in water bodies. That's going right into a catch basin. That's Lake George. People dumping things into catch basins, and a lot of this is education. A lot of people don't understand that these catch basins are connected directly to water bodies. So paint getting dumped down in there. We've seen that. And then some that you might think would be signs of an illicit discharge, but really this is just growth of iron oxidizing bacteria that comes out of areas that are wetland areas, high groundwater. This is natural bacteria growth, but it can have a look to it where we get calls a lot saying, hey, this is a weird substance coming out of here, and it's usually iron oxidizing bacteria. And it can produce that sheen that may look like a petroleum sheen as well. Uncovered dumpsters. So some sources of illicit discharges that we've found throughout 12 years of doing this, and municipalities throughout Warren County, you know, car washes, car fluids, definitely household chemicals, swimming pools, garbage trucks pulling up over catch basins, emptying garbage or squeezing out the garbage juice, carpet cleaning, concrete washout, paving driveways and sealing driveways. We've seen them seal over catch basins that are connected, and so we'll get that petroleum sheen, that small, that strong smell of fuel, and many more. So an overview for 2023, like Dave said, it took a while for us to get the YSI, even after we had a contract. It was like a 3-month delay on getting that sampling meter. So we still went ahead and started mapping a lot of the outfalls. So we completed the outfall mapping for the northern part of Queensberry, the town of Lake George. We mapped 41 outfalls throughout this area. You can see all the outfalls on here. We tagged any outfall that needed to be sampled. So when we were out mapping, if there was dry weather and that outfall was flowing, we're going to go back and collect samples from those locations. It just got a bit too cold to be using the YSI by the time we were able to sample too many of these. So we have 19 outfalls we've got to go back to. So they're broken down here between sampled outfalls, need to be sampled outfalls, and then all the outfall locations. So of the outfalls we've come across, there's a few that were potential, one that was suspect. The one that was suspect was actually a driveway sealing. So we knew exactly where it was coming from. They sealed the driveway, they got in there into the catch basin. And then some potential ones were just like real minor chlorine hits. Again, that can come from municipal water. Few low ammonium hits could be from fertilizer. And that was really all we really found. We found some with slightly more algae growth than we would see worth noting. 2024 plans. So sample those 19 outfalls that we were unable to sample in 2023. So that's definitely a priority. I'd love to do a shoreline survey for outfalls, because again, these outfalls are really difficult to find. Stormwater system, try to find out where the pipes go. A lot of times those pipes go across private property. So a shoreline survey, to be able to see it from the lake perspective, looking back at properties, I think would be really helpful. To find some of those outfall pipes, where we can then go up to the stormwater system to be able to inspect and sample from the road. And then of course, continue outfall mapping and sampling up into Bolton and Peg. So again, Lake George Park Commission has been an awesome partner with the district. I usually, we preach a lot about water quality and some of the effects we've seen over the years. And we teamed up with Dave and the Lake George Park Commission to actually do a lot of filming, diving in Lake George and show some of these things like hand harvesting, dealing with invasives, what a delta looks like underwater, and a large disturbance, what algae growth looks like underwater. So we could actually bring the viewers into the lake instead of just telling them what occurs. So this is the link to that little documentary. Dave gives an excellent interview in it. As well as Chris Kavinsky gives an excellent interview. So yes, thank you for being excellent partners in a lot of these projects and programs. We've teamed up well on over the years. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask away. We're not far away, so keep it call.
So the environmental park where they took the water from the North Lake coming down Westbrook, has it worked as originally planned, are you aware? In terms of stopping the delta as much as?
Yes, I mean, Chris could probably speak a little more to that, but I think, those stormwater wetlands have worked very well. Right, Chris, or sediment?
Yeah, that project was very successful. We continue to monitor that. That's probably removed around 93 to 95% of the TSS. So that's the suspended solids that come down through the system. The goal was 90%, so it exceeded that. It exceeded phosphorus removal. Phosphorus were, depending on the time of year, between 65 and 75%. We were shooting for 50, so that was, yeah, it's been very successful. We also monitored for heavy metals, because a lot of metals come off of roadways. That's been very good as far as the nickel and zinc, iron. One thing, chlorides. I mean, our levels, the discharge from there were upwards of 500 to 600 milligrams per liter, which, you know, gets up into those concerns about toxicity zones, but, and so we try to use that to improve the road salt reduction practices.
Obviously gravel wetlands are still working as we anticipated, or do they still need some cleaning out?
They need a lot. I'll just say we are trying to get, trying to schedule have Dr. Ballesteros come down from New Hampshire. To take a look at that. There are concerns about that. I think a lot of it, unfortunately, the management of that construction is not done properly. All know a lot of what happened there. And so that has been shut off a lot of it. So, but it's unfortunate, but we want to try to reinvestigate that.
And did the biodiverse pond that DEC put on Dog Beach, did it work?
I wasn't involved in that project at all.
I don't know if that was one of the type of solutions that kept getting tested. Because we didn't have the same problems, which I know there was probably other factors as well, but we didn't have the same closing of the beaches, et cetera, that we had in prior years.
I know we cleaned out, or we worked with, the village and town, cleaned out a lot of that stormwater system. And there was some other sources there, again, in the catch basins. Things of that nature, again, where the education can really come to people.
And who's responsible to clean out the catch basins?
Depending on the locations, it would depend on the municipality, so on county roads, the county will clean it out unless they have an agreement with the town. Town owns the county clean it out.
And what's good practice in terms of?
So both the town and the village have a back truck, they can bring that back truck out, clean out all that sediment trash and debris.
What is it, a couple times a year, 4 times a year, when needed?
So, same question. So there are catch basin maintenance plans for MS4s and the town and village both being part of the MS4. That's a new requirement and permit. But the town and village are both very good about maintaining those systems. There's a lot of stormwater separators in and around Lake George. That I've cleaned out with both of these guys a number of occasions. Yeah, they do a great job.
Thanks.
Good job.
Okay, very interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. The more you know about it, the scarier it's good. Okay. Formal application. President, we have two today. And Joe, are you? I, man du jour?
So we had two applications that we're reviewing concurrently, because they're related. We have Dunham's Bay Marina, which is seeking to modify its marina permit to remove one motorized boat rental, replace it with a tour boat. And we also had an existing tour boat that's authorized to operate on Lake George, and it's seeking to move its operation from the Flamingo to Dunham's Bay Marina. Currently, Mr. Is it Zeiner? Yeah, that's how I say it in my head. Good. Yeah, that's right. So, Mr. Zeiner, currently is a quick launch customer at Dunham's Bay Marina, but then operates from the Flamingo, so it's a little inconvenient. So what he's looking to do is not just be a quick launch, but also to operate that facility. And Drew is here to talk about the applications and answer any questions. Just step up to the mic, introduce yourself, and give us kind of an overview.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Drew Zeiner, and I run Zeiner Guide Service LLC. So it's pretty much just a full-time fishing charter. I was actually going to be a high school English teacher a few years ago. I graduated from Siena College, and during my student teaching, it got shut down because of COVID. So I began guiding during this process, and it kind of took off. So I started at Saratoga Lake, and then I kind of wanted to move up into Lake George, which kind of led me here. So the plan now, I got it approved by the town of Queensbury not too long ago at a meeting. We kind of discussed a lot of things. But basically the hope is that I can just keep my boat right at Dunham's Bay Marina and pick up my clients there and go out to the lake to fish. There has been some drawback from the Dunham's Bay Association, but I've wrote out that there's only going to be 2 trips per day, a maximum of 4 people in the boat at once, and then we're not going to do any fishing in the actual bay itself. So we're going to have to get beyond that bay to not disturb any of the homeowners. And that's the basic gist of it.
Okay, anybody have a question for the applicant? Are remote customers still there?
Yeah.
Feel free to come in at that time. We don't have good eyes on you, but we can hear you.
So this is a wash between giving up a slip that's leased versus.
As far as boating activity is concerned, we view it as a reduction in boating activity. So the marina is currently authorized for 2 boat rentals. I don't know that they're currently using that authorized activity, but they certainly could, or a predecessor could, or they could lease it out to somebody else, which could have, 8 1-hour rentals per day, or 2 4 hours, or, there's no limit really on what they could do. So going from a boat rental, someone off the street, that might not be familiar with the lake, by mile-an-hour zone and everything else, and going to a fishing charter, which in our mind, is one of the more benign uses on the lake, to a licensed captain, to a boat that only carries 4 people, where it's, more of a morning activities and maybe an afternoon bachelor party, type activity. It certainly seems like a reduction in overall intensity of use. So boating activity would absolutely, in our mind, not only be a wash of a reduction. We have seen some comments from the public that say, well, they're not using that boat rental now, so technically it's in. And I can certainly appreciate that perspective. However, on paper, they could start this tomorrow, and I think it would be much more impactful to the rental business than the tour boat that they're asking.
And this boat would have to go under the bridge,
It does fit.
size wise, then you exit Dunham's Bay before you start anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Is there anybody else here to speak on that project? Seeing none, hearing none, do we have a resolution?
Resolution 2024-07. Application number 1023-4026. Applicant is Frank Grill, Dunham's Bay Marina. Whereas the applicant has applied for a Class A marina modification to replace one motorized boat rental with one tour boat. And whereas the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record, and the commission has made a determination that the project is an unlisted action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act, 6 NY CRR 617.5, as lead agency for the purposes of the State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no significant impact on the environment, and the action is considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NYCRR 645-.3. And the public notice has been published and distributed as required, and the applicant has demonstrated that the facility complies with the Class A marina requirements of 6 NYCRR 646-1.2B. And the commission finds that the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, and will not have an undue visual, cultural, or audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby resolves to approve the above application. So moved, as proposed.
Motion,
Second.
motion seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any nays? Hearing none, resolution passed. You're in business.
Thank you. We have one more resolution, bit of a technicality, because there's two projects, but we kind of reviewed them as one, so.
Just on my agenda.
Yeah.
Okay,
Joe, can we go to one more resolution?
Yes, resolution 2024-08. Application number is TB 234508. Applicant is Drew Seinhardt, Guide Service LLC. Whereas the applicant has applied to modify an existing tool permit to allow operation from the Clemens Bay Marina, the Lake George Park Commission has reviewed the application, supporting documents, comments received, and other information which appears in the record. The commission has made a determination that the project is no listed action pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act 6 NYCRR 617.5 as lead agency for the purposes of State Environmental Quality Review Act, has made a determination that the project will have no adverse significant impact on the environment. And whereas the action considered to be a major project pursuant to 6 NY 645-5.3, public notice has been published and distributed as requested. And whereas the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the standards of tour boat at 6 NY CRR 646-1.4D. And where the commission finds the project will have no adverse impact on the health, safety, or welfare of the public, the environment, or the resources of the park, and will not alter the essential character of the area in which it is proposed, will not lead to congestion in the park, will not have an undue visual, cultural, or audible impact on the neighborhood or the park. Now therefore be resolved, the Lake George Park Commission hereby approves the above application as proposed. So moved.
motion, seconded. Any discussion, any commission discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays? Hearing none, that resolution is passed. Item 6. Pardon me?
Has it now approved?
Oh, yes. No, your second congratulatory.
Yeah.
Check your mail. Continuing on with Deputy Director Joe Flynn, where's a different half? That's the 2024 septic inspection program overview, one of our most favorite subjects.
All right, so fortunately, we're coming upon the septic season, which is good. We had a good season in 2023, as you all know, conducted roughly 320 inspections out of the roughly 500 we were looking for. We were able to touch base with nearly all, but maybe a dozen of those 500, learned something about the system, its status of repair or new construction pending. We did send out letters to all of our new 2024 participants, maybe 3 weeks ago or so. The inspection season starts April 1st and will run through October 1st. We've already had folks calling and scheduling their inspections, which is great. I think we've already probably got a dozen on the books. Last time I talked with Connie. We had Seth Landry, our inspector from last year, stayed over the winter with us to help us with administration, catching up with all the folks from 2023. crossing all those T's, dotting those I's, following up with people, checking on their permit status. And then also, fielding calls from, the folks with questions about the program, with the fees, and things of that nature. So, we're all geared up. We also have, Ben, as you know, we're gonna be training Ben as a meeting inspector as well. So the expectation is, Seth will be our number one. Ben will be, second on the call until things get heavy, when we bring in our second seasonal inspector again, Dave Hatton. And then the rest of us, trying to be as, flexible as possible, around the field, looking at these systems. So, landowners just need to call their septic caller, find a date and time, reach out to the commission office, and ensure that someone's on site, to their septic with them, and figure out the status of the funds. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Would we say that the public has welcomed us with open arms?
I would, and talking with, Seth through the winter, everyone really gets it, they understand it. I think there's a common sense element that effluent is filthy, and the lake that we all love is clean. And there is a notable difference between what you see when you look in a tank and what you see in the lake that you want to enjoy. And I think, this community, as we all know, loves the lake, feels tied to the lake. And so it's easy for people to appreciate the importance of this, and difficult to understand how 2 feet of soil can make water go from black water to something close that you want to drink. But if these systems are constructed and sited correctly and if they're maintained, that's the magic of biogeochemistry. And so I think 99% of people have been great and welcoming and helpful, in addition to the haulers. It's super helpful on site. Even the septic fees, we've had a lot of questions about the fees. Some people thought it was just the first, they just had to pay $50 the first year. I didn't quite understand that this was a effort, and you have to do this all the time. But once they appreciate that, it costs $250 to conduct inspection, and that occurs every 5 years, and we're just trying to spread that out. The Canada dock fees and boat fees that people are accustomed to. Again, once they understand the mechanism, everyone's been really supportive.
How are we dealing with commercial septic systems?
Just the same as all the other ones. They do have a separate fee structure. It's $100 instead of $50, so it's still pretty reasonable for the size of these. We send out 2 inspectors instead of 1, because, they tend to be more complex. They're spread out in a larger, area. We did one last year where it was, me and Roger Smith, and then, Seth and Dave Hatton were available, so they stopped by, and, by the end of it, all of us were actively working and walking around the site, and working with the land to figure out what's going on. We anticipate that most of these folks will try to call earlier in the season or later in the fall, so that they don't disrupt their business. I know, for instance, like, Brody at Brody's Lakeside, right? He's looking to get in early. Chicks said, geez, we don't want to mess up our boating season, so they're looking, I think they called the book something in September, so luckily we have an inspection season that's long enough where, whether people are snowbirds or have a commercial business going on, you can fit in an inspection at a time that's supposed to be.
Are we finding a lot of people that are voluntarily improving their systems?
Yeah, and that's actually been a surprising thing. People trying to get ahead of the curve. Nobody wants to get a bad grade, right? Nobody wants to fail. And a lot of folks, I think, septic has been out of sight, out of mind, but then once they started thinking about it, they realized, they might have a problem. So a lot of that goes, roughly 100 or so where we call to say, hey, we're not making it to your site, what's the deal? A lot of them had already contacted an engineer and they're going through a process independent of our inspection because they identified they had a problem and wanted to take care of it on their own time. On their own terms. So with that, we're keeping them on our schedule, keeping correspondence open. We continue to send them letters saying, hey, you're due. And then they just simply update us through the process. We're trying to do as lenient with that as possible because folks are being proactive, trying to do the right thing. And, taking the long view on this, that's a great spot to be in and certainly encourage it.
A couple questions. So how is the foundation that supports this process, the haulers and the facilities? How have they been able to keep up with us? Because if you end up with 500 and we had 300, that's 40% more that are some, that will happen this year if we actually get to 5.
Sure. So Dave can talk a little bit about the facilities in a minute, but as far as the haulers, there hasn't, we haven't received any calls where someone said, geez, I called 5 haulers, nobody can make the site. So we think that, the entities exist and can meet this. And in a perfect world, we would have 2 to 4 inspections every single day from April 1st to October 1st. But that's something that happens, right? People, we had a really busy season in July and August. And so we might get to that point. But we're hoping that, sort of self-regulating. I know, Mailer's company, bought a new truck. They added a truck to their operation to try to accommodate it. So I don't think we're gonna have trouble with the haulers. And locally, it's just been a few doing the vast majority. So there's still opportunity. I'm sure there's companies in neighboring counties that could help if need be, and I think the business will drive that. The facilities is kind of a separate entity. So Dave, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the challenge, as we see it for the near future, really isn't the hauler so much, they're adaptable. The challenge is disposal, and several people in the room are familiar with the challenge, but there's only a few locations that these septic haulers can dispose their septage to. Starting up north, it's Ticonderoga. So Ticonderoga has reduced their intake dramatically, the number of loads that they're willing to take. I don't have the specific numbers of them, but I talked to their sewer administrator, and they're challenged with that because they have to offload their solids, and they only do that in one place, and that's a private farm up in Ticonderoga that's having some challenges also. Moving south, the town of Fayette does not accept septage. Moving south, the town of Bolton does not accept septage. Further south is the village of Lake George, who back in the day, even with their old system, would take over 40,000 gallons a day. Now they have a brand new wastewater treatment plant. It doesn't do well with heavier loads of septic, so they've reduced that amount from 40,000 down to 14,500 a day. Which is problematic. They're seeking additional funds, and they've requested those funds. They did not get those funds through the state of New York in this application around. I'll talk about that in a quick second. Going further south is the city of Glens Falls, which has always been kind of the premier, the largest location. They've reduced their loads per day from 30 loads to 8 per day. And so if a hauler gets there and they are third in line, that's 3 hours, because it's not like dump. It is, they wait an hour for each truck to go. So if Mailer, for example, hometown, had planned on a morning pump out and disposal at the village of Lake George and was turned away and went to the city of Glens Falls and had to wait 3 hours, and he had an afternoon pump out at Lake George, that's fine. So that's our biggest challenge. And if you recall back maybe a year ago, Matt Fuller was in the room on a different issue, and I kind of asked his convenience to talk very quickly about some of these challenges and where he sits, because he represents a lot of the towns that own these wastewater treatment plants. So kind of long story short, we can talk about it at a future meeting if you like, but I have a request for proposals on my computer that I'm waiting to get out the door that is seeking to get qualified entity. And right now, my hope for a qualified entity is Matt Fuller and Sean Doty, who works now in the town of Bolton. To have them put together just a more detailed analysis, and that take what I said and expand that out many times to do a deep dive into these wastewater treatment plants and look at what happens when they take extra septic. They have to analyze all of these various factors of the treatment plants. So all those records are available, and then take that and put that into a summary, and then that would paint a larger picture for the folks in Albany. So when these wastewater treatment plants are seeking additional funding for upgrading their plants in certain capacities, they may be ranked a little bit more highly in the system, because this is going to happen this year. We're going to get a 2-month report from our consultants. And then 3 months later, Albany is going to give millions of dollars to the Lake George region. Well, we're talking 5 to 10 years. And the way Matt Fuller describes it, and Joe and myself went to lunch with Sean and Matt on a number of related activities. And we just got into this deep dive where we're fairly well versed in it. But I think Matt kind of described it as kind of a slow moving train wreck. He said there's not a lot of people paying attention. Matt has to, because he's the attorney for these towns. But he says at some point we're going to reach the capacity where there's simply no place left to dispose of that. And with our program, as robust as it is, we're increasing that septage that's going to these facilities. So unfortunately, the current challenge that we have is going out with requests for qualifications proposals takes time, effort, and we may get a different provider, which is fine. And ultimately, we talked about this in the past at a previous meeting, that I may bring to this board a summary of, do we want to put funds towards this? And then you as a board will decide, yes, we want to put $50,000, $100,000 into this study. That would be in concert with DEC and the Department of Health to say, here's a methodology that we're using to determine the septic disposal capacity. Want them in ground level to understand that this isn't us shilling for something, this is their involved in understanding at the end of the day, when this report comes out, that the commissioner of DEC and Department of Health will understand that this regional septic disposal problem is real. And then when applications go to the Environmental Facilities Corporation for increased funding, this is the new model. So that's kind of a long walk to the answer that we're getting at. This is something that is on our radar. We don't have any control or authority whatsoever in how the state of New York ranks different projects, but we know these towns want to do the upgrades. They don't have the resources to do it, and the state of New York is the primary partner to help out in this. There are some new resources with the bond act that are coming in the state of New York. And we're hoping that we can kind of be in as a part of that, where the state understands that this is an important issue for the region, with or without a program. Our program may accelerate that trend a little bit, but that trend has been there now for quite a number of years. Tom Garrett's been involved in this for many, many years and has a wealth of knowledge on this. So the engineering community is well aware of it, the DEC is well aware of it, all of us are certainly well aware of it. But we haven't seen a document that takes all this information, puts it into something and leads to a proposal for all of them.
Did any other areas in New York State put in a septic type program like we did and run into the same problem, or, I mean?
So we researched 13 different programs that are similar to ours, but we didn't get to the point of talking about septic disposal. That's not a bad idea though. So we can, over the next, probably before the next meeting, we can reach back out to those folks and say, are you running into similar challenges with septic disposal? Be an interesting answer. Great. I have one final question. What are we doing
Dave,
about?
could I just ask a question here? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we'll be right with you, Kathy. Candace.
Okay. Well,
Oh.
it's been a little unclear, so if I'm redundant, please let me know if you've already answered this, but I'm assuming that the letters have gone out for the initial inspections this year. And you're going to be picking up where you left off last year, the people that were not, that were notified but did not get a hauler in time, and then, the season ended. So, and I was wondering how the response has been so far, if you've had any people that have responded and have set up appointments. And my second question is, with the fifth, and I'm sure being on the committee, I must have known the answer at one time, but it kind of escapes me. The $50 that each residence pays each year, my home at Hewlett's Landing was one of the first ones to be inspected. And from what I recall, and I just want to make sure that people understand this, of course, we had only paid $50, and I remember that because we had some issues that have now been rectified, that the hauler had to stay there longer. And it just seems to me that we paid the hauler for that visit because, of course, they clean out the septic tank and are there for the other inspections along with Seth and Dave. So yeah, so those two questions about the $50 and the fee, and the second one is how has the response been so far if you've sent the letters out?
Yeah, can you hear me okay, Kathy?
Yes, I'm leaning closer to my computer. Thank you.
We had about 18 landowners that were what we're calling holdouts, where we just didn't hear from them at all. We have sent them at this point maybe 5 letters. The most recent one was certified mail to make sure that we know we've got the right address and we have a connection. we've heard back from a few of those folks, some, there was a loss of a family member or, other significant personal, such family scenarios where it was totally reasonable, that we weren't on their priority list. We haven't, probably to your question, had anybody call back and say, no, absolutely not, this is not happening. So we haven't had that scenario yet, and we hope we don't. Although, I'm sure it'll come up. We're dealing with a lot of landowners, but so far everyone has been cooperative. We have, in our last letter, asked them to respond to us by, I believe, July 1st, because they're supposed to be in last year's program. We're trying to get them done early in this year's program, and again, see if we're working with a cooperative partner or not. So that way we know whether to, raise it to the level of Lieutenant Johns or Carla, or something along those lines. As far as the $50 annual fee only covers the cost to the commission for the inspectors and administration of the program. So the haulers and their associated costs are separate and paid for by the landowner, as it sounds like was your experience.
Well, I just wanted that to be clarified because that's what I had thought from the beginning, and I just didn't want people to be kind of blindsided on that.
Thank you.
Thinking, oh yeah, I'm the end of my, I'm one of the last ones to be inspected. I've paid in my $250. How come I still have to pay the hauler his fee? So it could have been a little bit, not very clear. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up to make sure it's on the record and people realize that.
Thanks, Kathy.
And if I could just add a little bit to Kathy, when we talked to folks about that, and there was some concern, as you know, that they thought it covered everything. And when we're talking about the development of the program, the Department of Health recommends cleaning out your septic tank on average between every 3 and 5 years anyway. So the commission
Absolutely.
we didn't see that as an increased burden on the property owner, because that should be the annual maintenance anyway. So the additional burden on the property owner is the $50 per year. And I've taken a few calls, not many, maybe 3 to 5 so far this spring, of the people that Joe mentions about, hey, I thought I was one and done with 50. And then we kind of break it down for them. And those folks that I talked to when we got off the phone understood it, and they weren't upset about that. I have one individual that says the state of New York always charges too much money anyway, and I don't like the program, and that's totally a valid opinion, and that's perfectly fine. We just want them to understand it and the reasoning behind it. And as Joe describes, it is important. If anybody questions how the program is working, our annual report is on our website. And in fact, that about half of the systems that we inspected either need repair or replacement, speaks to the fact that this is an important program to have in place right now, because as these things go into disrepair and failure, that's where we start to see public health challenges and other public challenges. So it's a timely thing to do, and the results are bearing out the need for the program.
Yes, and as far as I'm concerned, in a critical environmental area, it should be 2 to 3 years, your septic tank should be pumped out. But yes, thank you. I mean, I had no negative questions or anything like that. I just wanted it to be clear. And yeah, it's best thing that's happened to the lake as far as I'm concerned.
Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Ken.
Enjoy the weather wherever you are.
Oh, it's lovely here today.
Don't tell us. We'll send you a picture of your front lawn. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have one final thought. What do you do about islands?
You could see the water right out my front door, my front window.
Be quiet, we're finished with you.
Yes, I think we have a number of island sites actually on the docket for this year. There's no special exemptions for them at this time. There are, I believe, there's one contractor that takes care of this. Chris Gabriel has a barge and some tanks. And so people coordinate with Chris, he comes and empties the tank. And then he has the added, so he's heading back there on the barge and then finding a place to meet a hauler and then getting that effluent onto a hauling truck and off to a facility to be able to describe it. So a little more complicated, no doubt more costly because of that. But we'll see, I talked to Chris Gabriel a couple months ago, just to kind of understand the process a little bit more. But as of right now, it's the same standard for all those folks pumping out those systems and inspecting.
Great. Good report. 2024, we're a long ways away from when we started day one, right? Law Enforcement Committee report. Dave Floyd, are you with us?
I am.
Okay.
here.
Would
The
you
law
keep-
committee met this morning. We discussed several things. First of all, we've put a new 250 horsepower motor on boat 101. We also have a purchase order approved for a new motor for boat 103. We've installed a new gas tank on 5 and we bought it and it's been installed. We are sending 2 of our officers to 2 accident reconstruction school to get everybody up to date on how do we investigate accidents occurring on the lake. We are going to have Marine Patrol classes the last week of April and the first 2 weeks of May. We've hosted this for many, many years. So in those 3 weeks, we're going to be seeing lots of patrol boats cruising out on the lake as the classes are going to be conducted. And 2 of our officers are going to be instructors for these classes. We went into executive session to discuss ongoing cases, and we exited executive session. In May and June, we are going to conduct boater safety classes. And I want to remind everybody that this is the last year that you can operate a boat on Lake George at any age without a license. Starting in 2025, everybody operating a boat on Lake George must have a license. So be warned that this is the year to go to the classes and get that done. I do not have a copy of the resolution. Does somebody there have it? And could they read it, please?
Sure can. Joe, do you have it?
Yep. Resolution 2024-09. Whereas the Law Enforcement Committee met on March 26, 2024, to review matters pertaining to the Lake George Park Commission's Marine Patrol and the Commission's law enforcement program. And whereas the active law enforcement cases and their status were reviewed in executive session, and the Law Enforcement Committee has reported on the results of that committee meeting at this full commission meeting. And the Law Enforcement Committee recommends acceptance of this month's law enforcement report. Now therefore be resolved that the commission accepts the report of the Law Enforcement Committee. So moved.
Second.
I second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any commission conversation, comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Hearing no nays, that motion is carried. David and Kathy, we'd like to extend our real thanks to you for, it's not fun to be on the other end of an electronic device for a meeting like this. Oh, John McDonald.
Yeah, John's here too.
Pardon?
John McDonald was with us as well.
Okay.
John's here.
Didn't mean to ignore you, John. Now,
It's okay.
just for you folks from out of town, we're gonna ask for public comments. The only problem is, we don't have any public.
And public
So,
life.
They've all left us.
at your public locations throughout the United States of America, do you have anybody who wants to make a comment?
Nobody here.
None? I'll ask for a motion. Motion made, seconded, and we are adjourned.
See you next month.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Bye, Karen.
Yeah.
Buddy, thank you.